They said history remembers the victors, but history can also lie. For 1,000 years, the Galactic Council ruled the stars. 1,000 worlds beneath their law, 1,000,000 species bound by their decree. They called it peace, a fragile, glittering illusion held together by fear and silence. And when one species refused to kneel, they decided to erase it. Not conquer, not enslave, erase. The species was human. The world was Earth. The Council called it a necessary correction. They believed humanity had grown too proud, too unpredictable, too dangerous. We had reached beyond our station, built fleets that challenged the elder empires, explored regions forbidden by decree, and dared to speak as equals among gods. They gathered their fleets in orbit around the Sol system. One by one, the great nations of the galaxy voted. One by one, their representatives cast their judgment. And then the council speaker uttered the words that changed the course of eternity. Let Earth be removed from all records, all maps, and all memory. The sky above our world turned to fire. Beams of energy brighter than suns tore through the atmosphere. Oceans boiled, cities vanished, the moon shattered under the weight of their bombardment. They said history remembers the victors, but history can also lie. For 1,000 years, the Galactic Council ruled the stars. 1,000 worlds beneath their law, 1,000,000 species bound by their decree. They called it peace, a fragile, glittering illusion held together by fear and silence. And when one species refused to kneel, they decided to erase it. Not conquer, not enslave, erase. The species was human. The world was Earth. The Council called it a necessary correction. They believed humanity had grown too proud, too unpredictable, too dangerous. We had reached beyond our station, built fleets that challenged the elder empires, explored regions forbidden by decree, and dared to speak as equals among gods. They gathered their fleets in orbit around the Sol system. One by one, the great nations of the galaxy voted. One by one, their representatives cast their judgment. And then the council speaker uttered the words that changed the course of eternity. Let Earth be removed from all records, all maps, and all memory. The sky above our world turned to fire. Beams of energy brighter than suns tore through the atmosphere. Oceans boiled, cities vanished, the moon shattered under the weight of their bombardment. Within hours, the cradle of humanity became a grave of glass and dust. The Council's historians deleted every mention of us from their archives. Our coordinates erased. Our data corrupted, our colonies hunted and silenced. To the galaxy, it was as if Earth had never existed. But what they didn't know was that erasure is not the same as extinction. Beneath the chaos, a single convoy of ships escaped. Old freighters, mining barges, and civilian transports carrying millions of refugees. They fled into the void, guided by what remained of the Terran fleet. At their head was Admiral Lira Draven, the last commander of the United Earth Defense Armada. His ships were broken, his fuel nearly gone, but his will unyielding. He gave one final broadcast before vanishing into the outer dark. "We are not gone. You may bury our home,
but not our kind. One day, the stars themselves will remember us. And then, nothing. Centuries passed. The Council grew complacent. The story of humanity became a myth, a warning told to young species. Do not rise too fast. Do not dream too much. But deep in the uncharted rim, beyond the reach of Council sensors, something stirred. A forgotten world orbited a dying red star. Its surface was frozen, its sky silent, but beneath its crust, a heartbeat pulsed. They called it Haven 9. For 300 years, our descendants lived there, hidden, surviving in the dark. They built cities beneath the ice, powered by fusion cores salvaged from wrecked ships. They taught their children the forbidden language of Earth, sang songs of oceans they'd never seen, and told stories of a blue sky no alien had ever believed existed. And above them, buried under the planet's north pole, slept something older still, a fleet entombed in ice, waiting for a signal that had never come, until the night it did. It was faint at first, a single pulse across the ancient comma rays, nothing more than a whisper of static, but the pattern was unmistakable.
3 beats, pause. 2 beats, pause, 1. A code from the past, a code known only to the old Terran fleet. Commander Lira Draven, descendant of the last admiral, was the first to hear it. She stood in the command chamber, staring at the flickering hologram as it played over and over. "Are you certain?" her aide whispered. Lira nodded slowly. "It's a distress beacon, old Earth frequency. But it's not from here." "Then from where?" She zoomed out the display. The signal came from deep space, from within the heart of Council territory. She stared at the map for a long time, feeling the cold weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. "Someone's calling us, someone who remembers." And with those words, the silence that had lasted 3 centuries began to break. Engines that hadn't fired in generations roared to life beneath the ice. The old warships, relics of a forgotten war, shuddered as power coursed through their veins. One by one, they rose from their frozen tombs, glowing like ghosts in the storm. The humans of Haven had waited their entire lives for this day. The day the erased would rise again.
The storm howled over the ice plains of Haven 9, as if the planet itself had felt the shift. The world had known silence for centuries, but that night, thunder returned, not from the sky, but from below. Massive doors, kilometers wide, cracked open through the glacier. The light of ancient reactors bled out into the frozen dark. Beneath the surface, forgotten hangars came alive. Rows upon rows of black steel hulls, ships older than memory, groaned as they awakened. Their engines hummed weakly, flickering with blue light. Symbols of a dead world glowed again on their sides. UEDF, United Earth Defense Fleet. For the first time in 300 years, humanity had a heartbeat. Commander Lira Draven stood in the control deck of the buried Citadel, watching through reinforced glass as the ice melted away from the lead dreadnought. Her reflection stared back at her, pale eyes, tired but unbroken. Her voice was low. "Bring her online." Engineers and operators scrambled around her, voices trembling with disbelief. "Yes, Commander. Activating Indomitable." The ship's name flashed across the main screen. HSS Indomitable, the flagship of Admiral Kale Draven, her ancestor, her blood. As the fusion cores reached ignition, the entire chamber trembled. The ice cracked, avalanches roared across the surface, and for the first time in centuries, A human warship rose from the tomb of its own world. Its hull was scarred, its armor ancient, but its heart pure Terran iron. Lira whispered, "You've slept long enough."
The crew stared at her, some with tears in their eyes, others with awe. None had ever seen a true Terran battleship. For them, the Indomitable was a legend, a ghost story. But now, it was real, and it was angry. The signal that had awoken them pulsed again through deep space, stronger this time, closer. It wasn't a distress call anymore. It was a message. "We are alive." The words appeared on the comm screen in Old Terran Standard. No encryption, no code, just a declaration. Lyra's second-in-command, Captain Joran Vale, turned to her. "That can't be real. No one could have survived that long inside Council space." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Someone did, and they want us to know." She looked out at the ships awakening below. More hangars opened, more reactors lit up the dark. The old fleet, fractured, incomplete, was coming together. They had waited 3 centuries for a purpose. Now they had one. The following days were chaos and rebirth. Every surviving settlement on Haven sent volunteers, engineers, miners, historians, farmers, anyone who still carried a spark of the old human defiance. Old tech was scavenged, patched, rebuilt. AI cores from museum exhibits were reignited and uploaded into combat drones. Outdated warheads were stripped and rearmed. For the first time in living memory, the people of Haven didn't look down at the ice, they looked up at the stars. The old anthem of Earth echoed through the underground corridors. From ashes we rise, through silence we endure. The stars remember our name. Children who'd only known myth now watched their parents build warships. Elders who'd lost everything saw those ships take flight. And through it all, Commander Draven stood like a pillar of purpose. She wasn't seeking revenge, not yet. She sought truth. What had happened after Earth burned? Who had sent the signal? And why now? Meanwhile, far beyond Haven, the Galactic Council remained oblivious. They had long forgotten humanity, the primitive aggressors erased from their archives. To them, the solar system was a forbidden quarantine zone, a dead relic. Until the signal reached them too. Deep within the crystalline towers of Virillion Prime, the Council's intelligence chamber flickered to life. A dozen species gathered around a hologram displaying the transmission. The Council speaker's translucid wings shimmered in agitation. "This frequency, it cannot be. Humans were eradicated 306 cycles ago." A reptilian strategist hissed. "And yet this code, this pattern, matches the Terran encryption of old. We confirmed its destruction." A younger aide, nervous and pale, adjusted the feed. "The message is spreading across fringe systems. It's resonating, as if it's being repeated by dormant satellites." The speaker's voice turned cold. "Erase it, purge the signal, and send patrols to the rim sectors." But even as they gave the order, the message had already traveled farther than they knew. Because humanity had hidden more than ships. They had hidden echoes, self-replicating beacons buried in comets, hidden in the cores of asteroids, drifting across the void. For centuries, they'd slept, waiting, watching. Now, they were awake. Every time the Council tried to erase the message, it only grew stronger. It whispered through every relay, every transmission band. "We are alive." Back on Haven, preparations reached their peak. The Indomitable led the newly awakened fleet, the Sigma Line. Behind her, smaller cruisers, corvettes, and freighters stood ready. It wasn't a grand armada, but it was enough to make the stars tremble again. Lira walked the bridge, every step echoing with the weight of history. The hollow map displayed the target, the Virelian Relay, a massive comm station that linked half the Council's territories. "Once we take that relay," Joran said quietly, "they'll know we're real. There's no going back." Lira stared at the holographic image of the enemy's stronghold. "They erased us from history. Let's remind them that history bleeds." The bridge fell silent. The crew exchanged looks, fear, awe, determination. And then, with a single command, humanity's first war fleet in 3 centuries took flight. Engines ignited, tearing through the storm clouds of Haven. The fleet rose into the black, breaking the ice world's atmosphere like phoenixes rising from ashes. The stars stretched before them, endless, waiting. As the last rays of the dying red sun reflected off the hull of the Indomitable, Lira whispered to herself, "For Earth." The blackness of space stretched out before the Sigma fleet, vast and eternal, scattered with fractured starlight. For 3 centuries, humanity had been silent, buried, forgotten, erased. Now, the silence ended. The Indomitable moved like a ghost through the void, her hull reflecting no light, her engines whispering instead of roaring. She was a relic of an ancient age, and yet far ahead of her time. Every boat, every system, every circuit had been rebuilt not just with metal and code, but with memory. Inside the command deck, Commander Lira Draven stood before the main viewport, watching the stars drift past. She felt the weight of every soul that had ever lived on Earth pressing behind her eyes. Her father's stories, her mother's tears, the ashes of cities that no longer existed. All of it had led here. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "All ships, prepare to drop from stealth." A moment later, the fleet shimmered into existence. 13 ships, arranged in formation, facing the Virelian Relay, a massive ring-shaped structure orbiting a pale blue gas giant. The station was enormous, a lattice of silver and crystal, surrounded by defensive drones and patrol ships of the Council enforcement fleet. To any observer, it would have been an ordinary night in the outer sectors. Until the humans arrived. The first enemy sensors blinked red. The second followed, then the third. Alarms began to wail across the station. "Unidentified vessels detected. Configuration unknown. Energy signatures match ancient Terran design." The panic spread faster than light. Lira took a deep breath. "Open channel." Her voice echoed across the comm network, sharp and clear, broadcast in every known frequency. "This is Commander Lira Draven of the Human Restoration Fleet. You erased our world. You erased our people. Today, we remind you what it means to be human." The journey home began in silence. The stars stretched like ribbons of cold fire as the Indomitable led her fleet toward the forbidden coordinates, the place that had once been called Sol. For centuries, maps had marked it as a black zone. No approach, no scans. A scar in the galactic network, the wound left after humanity was erased. But now the humans were coming back, and the galaxy held its breath. Commander Lira Draven stood before the viewport as the navigation lights dimmed. The void ahead shimmered faintly, not natural light, but a distortion, a barrier. Council shielding array detected, said Echo, her ship's AI. Origin, unknown technology. Power output, impossible. Comparable to a dying star. Lira frowned. They sealed it. Confirmed. The entire Sol system is encapsulated in a quantum stasis field. No matter, no signal, enters or escapes. She took a long breath. They didn't just erase Earth, they buried it alive. The Sigma fleet came to a halt just outside the shimmering wall. Every sensor screamed with interference. Energy readings spiked and faded like static. "Is it breachable?" Joran asked quietly. Echo's tone turned somber. "Not with conventional weapons. But there is another way." Lira turned. "Explain." "Human neural signatures. The barrier responds to Terran genetic resonance. It was designed by the Council for humans. Only a human can open it, from the inside." A silence fell across the bridge. "Inside?" Joran repeated. "There's no one left inside." Lyra's gaze darkened. "That's what we thought." She looked down at the faint pulse still running through the data core, the signal that had awakened them months ago. It was coming from within Sol. Something, or someone, had survived. The fleet moved closer, weapons idle, sensors locked on the barrier's pulse. Then, for the first time in 3 centuries, the light began to shift. Waves of energy rippled outward, forming a spiral of blue light. Within it, a voice echoed through the comms, faint, distorted, ancient. "If you are hearing this, humanity endures. The Council will come for you. Do not let them bury the truth again." Lyra's hands tightened on the console. "That's Admiral Kale Draven." Joran's eyes widened. "Your ancestor?" She nodded slowly. "He didn't die on Earth. He sealed it, to protect whatever was left." The signal grew stronger. "This field is powered by our world's core. When it collapses, the Council will see what we left behind." And then silence. A deep rumble shook the void. The barrier flickered. For the first time in 3 centuries, light from the Sol system pierced through the darkness. What they saw stole the breath from every living soul aboard the fleet. Where once there had been ruin and ash, there now floated a planet of silver and green, Earth, restored. Vast towers of living crystal stretched toward the clouds, merging technology with nature. Oceans gleamed like mirrors, reflecting cities suspended in the air. But no human voices called from its surface. The world was alive, but empty. Echo's analysis came softly. Biosphere intact, no life signs detected. Planetary systems automated, self-sustaining. Joran whispered, "They turned Earth into a machine." Lira shook her head. "No, into a memory." Before they could descend, the stars ignited behind them. Dozens of hyperspace signatures appeared. Massive Council warships, their hulls gleaming with the light of compressed suns. The ascendant fleets. The Council's vengeance made manifest. Lira stared at the tactical screen as the enemy formation spread across the void like a tidal wave. "Echo," she said quietly. "Estimate. 74 capital ships, 9 carriers, hundreds of escorts." Joran laughed bitterly. They really don't take chances. Lira didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on Earth below, and for the first time, she smiled. They came too late. The comms flared open. A towering hologram filled the bridge, the image of the council speaker, feathers like blades of glass, eyes glowing with fury. Humans, your defiance ends here. You were erased for a reason. You are chaos, infection, violence. We will finish what was begun. Lira stepped forward. You erased us because you feared us, because you saw in us the one thing you could never control, choice. The speaker sneered. You are extinct. Extinction, Lira said, is what happens when something stops adapting. We never did. She turned to her crew. All ships, defensive grid. The speaker's voice turned into a roar. Then you will die with your ruins. The fleet of the council opened fire. Space erupted into blinding light. Energy beams the size of continents crossed the void. Human shields flared, cracked, and bled radiation. The Indomitable shuddered under impact. Bulkheads screamed, consoles exploded, but still, they held the line. Every ship in the Sigma fleet fought like a living creature, weaving, striking, falling, rising again. Even as they burned, they kept fighting. And then, through the chaos, Earth began to glow. Its oceans shimmered with white light. The clouds twisted into spirals. From the planet's core, a single beam of energy rose, piercing the sky, striking the heart of the battle. Echo's voice trembled for the first time. Quantum field collapse detected. Power surge. Incalculable. Lira's breath caught. She understood. Earth wasn't just a memory. It was a key. The beam spread outward, engulfing both fleets in its light. Sensors failed, weapons died, engines froze mid-burn. Every living being, human and alien alike, heard the same voice in their minds. A chorus of countless tones, male and female, old and young. We were the dream that learned to speak. You tried to silence us, but the dream endures.
The voice wasn't Lira's. It wasn't any one person. It was the collective echo of every human who had ever lived, preserved, awakened, unified. The Council's ships began to dissolve, their molecular bonds unraveling into dust. Not destroyed, transformed. The energy spread across the galaxy, flowing into the networks, the satellites, the machines. Everywhere it touched, systems flickered, and then, softly, began to beat, like a heart. When the light faded, silence returned. The Council fleets were gone. The Sigma fleet drifted above a reborn Earth, its skies now calm and blue. Lira stood at the viewport, her eyes filled with tears. "Echo," she whispered. "Status. Fleet integrity, compromised. Power, stable. Atmospheric re-entry, possible. Earth." Echo paused. Alive. Waiting. She closed her eyes and smiled. "Then let's go home." The Indomitable descended through the clouds, followed by the surviving ships. As they broke through the atmosphere, sunlight flooded the bridge. Wind, real wind. Ocean, the scent of rain. After 3 centuries, humanity had returned. In the years that followed, the legend spread. Across the stars, worlds once ruled by the Council whispered a new truth. that humans had not died. They had become something more. They were no longer conquerors or exiles. They were guardians, the living memory of what it meant to rise, fall, and rise again. On the plains of the new Earth, Commander Lira Draven stood before a monument of crystal and steel. Etched into its surface were the last words of her ancestor. "If the stars forget us, we will teach them to remember." And somewhere beyond the horizon, the world's core pulsed softly, steady, alive, eternal. A heartbeat that would never stop. The heartbeat of humanity.